Peter, the question of free will is one of the perennial questions of philosophy, and we think about it, we think we know what free will is, we have, but the more we think about it, the more we see problems in the issue. Help me understand how to address the problem of free will.
All right, let's begin by asking what we mean by free will, or if you don't mind, I prefer the term free choice.
Okay.
So you're going to make a choice between two or more things, let's say two. You're looking at choice A and choice B. If you're able to do A and also able to do B, then the choice is what we call a free choice. It's a matter of deliberating about two things and being able to do both of the things that you're deliberating about. Now, the problem about free choice is this. It seems to be inconsistent both with the idea that our acts are causally determined by the past and by the idea that our acts are not causally determined by the past. And if that's so, it's just impossible. To say that our acts are causally determined by the past means that the laws of nature and the past together dictate only one possible way for the world to go on. Well, if there's only one possible way for the world to go on, it must be the way that's going to happen. If you're going to do B, and you're trying to decide between A and B, and the laws of nature and the way the world is in the past dictate that B is going to happen, then can you be able to do A? If you were, you would think you must be able to do something that would change the laws of nature or else change the past. You're not able to do either of those, so it seems that you're not able to do the thing you're not going to do. You're only able to do the thing you are going to do, and thus you don't have free will. Free will is inconsistent with or incompatible with determinism. That's the thesis called incompatibilism in the philosophy of free will. But on the other hand, suppose that it's not causally determined whether you're going to do A or B. Then imagine in that case that, say, the obliging God of the philosophers moves the world backwards to just before you made that choice and lets things go forward then, and no more miracles until at least after the choice is made. You might not do it the same way the second time. And if God caused the world to revert to its state before you made that choice 1,000 times, sometimes you do it one way, sometimes you do it the other way. That certainly makes it look very much as if what you do, if your acts are indeed not determined by the past and the laws of nature, is just a matter of chance. You could observe somebody going through this sequence of 1,000 replays of the choice. 3 times in a row he chooses A, twice in a row he chooses B. It will look like a complete random distribution. And that doesn't look like a person is able on any given particular occasion to choose A or B. It looks like one of them is just going to happen and not as a matter of choice. So it seems that free will is incompatible with indeterminism, too. If something is incompatible with determinism and with indeterminism, one or the other has to be true. If it's inconsistent with both, it can't be true. There can't be such a thing as free will, unless there's something wrong with one of those two arguments I just gave.
So let's go into each one in detail, and there is a philosophical position called compatibilism or incompatibilism. So let me understand how those terms are defined.
Incompatibilism means that the conclusion of that first argument that I gave is right. Free will is incompatible with determinism. Compatibilism is the thesis that, no, that's not right. Free will is compatible with determinism. You can have the cake of free will and you can eat it too in having determinism because determined choice can be a free choice simply because nothing opposes your will when you make that choice. An unfree choice is where something opposes your will, according to the compatibilist.
Like my arm is tied down or something.
If your arm is tied down and you will to move it, nothing happens, or not what you wanted to happen. If you're in prison and you will to leave, you come up against a locked door. Your will is frustrated. But obviously, the truth of determinism doesn't mean that your will is frustrated. The laws of nature in the past determine your will along with everything. They determine that your hand not go up in a moment, perhaps, but they also determine that you not choose to make your hand go up in a moment, so everything works out nicely together.
So to the compatibilist, the person who would believe that you can make compatible real free will and determinism, the consequence argument you've used to show that that doesn't work.
Yes, that argument is sometimes called the consequence argument. That is supposed to show that that doesn't work because it implies that if you were able to do otherwise under conditions of determinism, then either you'd be able to change the laws of nature or you'd be able to change the past, and you can't do either of those things. There must be something wrong with that, and according to the incompatibilist, the mistake the compatibilist has made is to suppose that being able to do otherwise is just to say that that's what you would have done if your will had been unimpeded.
Right. Now, on the other side, to the incompatibilist, there's something that you've called the mind argument.
That was the second argument that I gave, not because it has something to do with the human mind, but because it's occurred so often in the pages of the philosophical journal Mind. It's just this replay argument that I mentioned. It just seems that if an event isn't determined by the past and the laws, then whether it happens is going to be a matter of chance, and that includes the outcomes of our choices. And if the outcome of a choice between A and B is a matter of chance, it doesn't seem that the agent is able to choose A or able to choose B.
So the event occurs randomly, and the agent, when you look at it, doesn't seem to have anything to do with it.
He certainly doesn't seem to have, as you might say, any control over what happens.
Okay, so now we have effectively eliminated the only two alternatives dealing with free will.
Right. Determinism and indeterminism are the only alternatives. They're inconsistent, and one or the other must happen. If both are inconsistent with free will, then there's no free will.
And free will is a meaningless concept. I mean, because
it's self-contradictory.
Yeah. Okay.
At any rate, like a round square.
Right.
And of course, many philosophers who suppose that to think that moral responsibility or blame is a real feature of the world, that presupposes free will. To criticize somebody for not doing what that person should have done is to imply that the person was able to do something else in its place. If you're never able to do anything but what you do, then moral responsibility has to be cast out along with free will.
So now what do? You have both sides being internally inconsistent, or apparently so. One of them has to be wrong. Help me to go to the next step.
All that can be said is that the arguments for all these conclusions look like very strong arguments. I don't know which argument to reject. The consequence argument, the mind argument. I am inclined, I think the strongest argument is the consequence argument, which was the argument for the incompatibility of free will and determinism. So I think that free will and determinism are inconsistent. I think that free will exists because it's required for moral responsibility, which obviously exists. Obviously, some things are some people's fault. Obviously, they couldn't be their fault unless there was some alternative. Oh dear. I don't know what's wrong with the argument for the conclusion that free will is inconsistent with indeterminism as well, what we've been calling the mind argument.
Some would try to help you by introducing an immaterial substance, call it a soul or whatever you want, into the human person.
I don't think that helps. I think you get exactly the same problem confronting an immaterial soul, because either if the soul is making a decision, or an angel is making a decision, or even God is making a decision between two alternatives, either the nature of that being dictates that one of those alternatives under those circumstances will be chosen, or it leaves it open between one or the other of them. And then you have the same problem all over again. If it dictates only one, there's no alternative. If it leaves two alternatives or more open, then it seems to be a matter of chance which of those two alternatives is chosen. In fact, I think that the immaterial soul is like a wheel that's turning that's not attached to anything in the free will problem. It's such an abstract and powerful problem that it's quite independent of the question of whether we're material or immaterial beings.